Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into some fascinating nerds today, all about acing the CSS exam interview. You've already conquered the written portion, so huge congrats on that. But now it's time to tackle those interviews, medical, psychological, and the big one, the panel interview.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to underestimate any of those stages.
Exactly. We're going to unpack each one so you can walk in feeling confident and totally prepared.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so the source we're looking at today is really insightful. It's a breakdown of the entire CSS interview process from someone who's actually been through it and succeeded.
Always helpful to learn from those who've been there and done that.
Right. And our mission today is to equip you with the knowledge and the strategies to confidently tackle each stage of this interview.
So let's dive in.
Let's do it. First up, let's talk about the competitive nature of this whole process.
It's definitely not a cakewalk.
Yeah.
Your source points out that only 393 candidates initially qualified. So that just shows you how crucial each stage really is.
You've got to bring your A game right from the start.
It's exactly.
Success at one level is your ticket to the next. No pressure, right? Right.
So speaking of starting strong, let's talk about something you might not expect. The medical clearance.
The what?
Yeah, the medical clearance. It might seem like a formality, but it's actually a make or break step.
Really?
Yeah, you could absolutely ace those interviews. But without medical clearance, you're stopped in your tracks.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that.
It's easy to overlook. But your source even mentions blood tests, urine tests, weight checks.
So it's not just a quick checkup.
Nope. They really want to make sure you're in good health.
Makes sense, though, when you think about the demands of a career in public service.
I guess so. You got to be able to handle the pressure.
Yeah.
All right, so medical clearance check. What's next?
Now let's move on to what many consider the most daunting stage, the psychological interview.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this is where things get interesting. It's a 5 to 6 hour session with all sorts of activities, and your source really emphasizes the importance of the biodata form.
Biodata form.
Yeah, it's basically a detailed questionnaire about you, your background experiences, personality, and it's crucial because it informs both the psychological and the panel interviews.
So they're really trying to get a complete picture of who you are.
Exactly, and they dig deep. We're talking about your hobbies, the books that have impacted you, your strengths and weaknesses, even your aspirations. It's all on the table.
I can see why people would find that intimidating.
Right. But it's also an opportunity to reflect on your journey and articulate what drives you. And remember, the chairman of the FPSC uses this form extensively. So you're essentially shaping their perception of you right from the start.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
So how do you nail this biodata form? Any tips?
Well, it's all about being authentic and thoughtful. Really take your time with it, and don't be afraid to showcase your personality. But we'll dive deeper into that later. For now, let's focus on those activities that make up the psychological interview.
Let's do it.
There are 4 main ones: extemporaneous, speech group discussion, command task, and then the actual psychological interview itself.
All right, let's break those down one by one. Starting with extemporaneous speech. What's that all about?
So imagine this. You walk into a room, get handed a topic you've never seen before, and have 2 minutes to prepare a 2-minute speech.
2 minutes to prepare. That's insane.
Right. It's definitely designed to test your ability to think on your feet. Your source emphasizes clear communication and structure over in-depth knowledge.
So it's more about how you present your thoughts than the content itself.
Exactly. Think of it as a mini presentation. You need a clear intro, a few key points, and a strong conclusion, all within those 2 precious minutes.
Okay, got it. 2 minutes to wow them. What's next?
Next up is the group discussion. But this one has an interesting twist. The focus is specifically on Urdu language skills.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about being articulate. It's about demonstrating your fluency in the dominant language of the region.
Exactly. And your source mentions that using English words is actually discouraged. So it's really about embracing the cultural aspect as well.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It makes sense, though, if you're going to be working in a Pakistani context. Okay, so we've had our solo speech. We've navigated the group discussion. What's next on this psychological roller coaster?
Now we come to the activity that sounds like it's straight out of a spy movie, the command task.
The what?
The command task. You get 25 minutes to come up with a strategy for a challenging scenario, and then you have to present and defend it to the group.
Okay, that sounds intense. What kind of scenarios are we talking about here?
Your source gives a great example. Imagine you're the deputy commissioner and there's heavy smoke blanketing Lahore. You need to call a meeting, bring in experts, and develop a plan of action, all while staying calm and collected.
Wow, that's a really vivid example. It really helps to understand what they're looking for. So they're assessing your leadership skills, problem-solving abilities.
Exactly. They want to see your confidence, your fluency in English, and your ability to think clearly under pressure.
I can see why they call it the command task. It's all about taking charge and rising to the occasion.
Mm.
All right, so we've given our speech, we've debated in Urdu, we've tackled a crisis. What's the last hurdle in this psychological marathon?
The final stage is the actual psychological interview itself. This is where they really delve into your personality, your thought processes, and any potential biases.
Sounds intense. So they're basically trying to figure out what makes you tick.
Exactly. They'll likely ask you to elaborate on things you mention in your bio data form. They might use role-playing scenarios to gauge your reactions, and they'll definitely be paying attention to how you handle any politically charged questions.
So it's a deep dive into your character, your values, and your ability to think critically.
Right. And keep in mind that this interview is conducted in both English and Urdu.
Good to know. So you need to be mentally prepared to switch back and forth between languages.
Exactly. Now, here's something interesting that your source brought up. There's actually some debate about whether the psychological interview is formally scored.
Oh, really? So some people think it's just a formality, while others believe it carries a lot of weight.
Exactly. And there doesn't seem to be a clear consensus on this. It's something your source grapples with as well.
So what's the best approach then? Should you prepare for it as if it's scored or not?
That's the million-dollar question. I think the safest bet is to prepare thoroughly, regardless of whether it's formally scored or not, because even if the interview itself doesn't have a specific score, your report still goes to the chairman of the FPSC, and that can definitely influence their overall impression of you.
So it's better to err on the side of caution and be as prepared as possible,
Yeah.
he says. So we've survived the psychological gauntlet. What's next?
Now it's time to face the music, the panel interview. But we'll save that for the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so we've made it through that psychological obstacle course. Now we're facing the main event, the panel interview.
This is it, the culmination of all your hard work.
It's where you get to showcase everything you've learned and prove you've got what it takes.
Exactly. And your source highlights 4 key areas you absolutely need to nail in this interview.
Let's break them down. Starting with those optional subjects. You chose them, so you should be an expert, right?
Well, yeah, that's the idea. You're guaranteed to get questions in this area, so make sure you've really brushed up on your chosen subjects.
It's not just about knowing the basics. They're going to want to see real depth of knowledge.
Exactly. They want to see that you can think, critically analyze information, and connect the dots.
So it's about showcasing your expertise and passion for those subjects. Okay, what about current affairs? That always feels like a moving target to me.
It definitely is. You need to have a 360-degree view of what's happening both domestically and internationally.
So we're talking about everything from the Russia-Ukraine conflict to global issues like climate change.
Absolutely. And don't forget about national politics and even significant events at the regional level.
It's about demonstrating that you're engaged and informed about the world around you.
Right. They want to see that you're not living under a rock, that you're aware of the challenges and opportunities facing Pakistan and the world.
Okay, then there's your academic degree. I imagine certain fields might attract more attention than others.
Yeah, definitely. Degrees in fields like law, literature, political science, international relations, those tend to draw more in-depth questions.
Makes sense. It's a chance to showcase your expertise in those areas and how they relate to public service.
Exactly. They want to see that you can connect your academic background to the real world and the challenges you'll be facing.
Okay, and lastly, we have those personality-based questions, the ones that really try to get to the heart of who you are.
These are the questions that come straight from your biodata form, remember?
Yeah, and they can be pretty wide-ranging.
Oh, definitely. They might ask about anything from the meaning of your name to the history of your favorite city or a book that's really impacted you.
It's all about getting to know you as a person, understanding your values and your character.
Exactly. And it all goes back to that biodata form.
Yeah.
That's why it's so crucial to be thoughtful and authentic when you're filling it out.
Because it's not just a formality, it's a window into your soul.
Uh-huh. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So be prepared to elaborate on anything you mentioned in that form.
Okay, so we've talked about what they're looking for in this interview. Now let's get into the how. What are some practical tips for actually acing it?
Well, first and foremost, start preparing now. Don't wait until the last minute, especially for current affairs and those optional subjects.
It's like training for a marathon. You can't just cram for it the night before.
Exactly. Consistency is key. Another great tip is to form study groups. It's a chance to practice mock interviews, get feedback from your peers, and just have a support system throughout this process.
I love that idea because let's face it, this whole process can be pretty nerve-wracking.
Oh, for sure. Having a group of people going through it with you can make a world of difference.
It's all about sharing knowledge, supporting each other, and keeping those stress levels in check.
Exactly. And speaking of things that can cause stress, your source mentions English fluency quite a bit. Any advice for candidates who might be feeling anxious about that?
Well, they acknowledge that it's definitely a factor,
Yeah.
but they also emphasize that it's something you can improve with dedicated effort.
There are tons of resources out there, online courses, language exchange partners, even just practicing speaking regularly can make a huge difference.
The key is to be proactive, and don't be afraid to seek out help if you need it. Remember, you've already come so far by passing that written exam. This interview is the final hurdle between you and a truly rewarding career in public service.
It's easy to get caught up in the pressure and the details, but try to keep the bigger picture in mind. This is about contributing to your country, making a positive impact, and pursuing a path that aligns with your values.
And on that note, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll distill some key takeaways and leave our listener with some food for thought. Okay, let's take a breath and recap everything we've uncovered in this deep dive about acing the CSS interview. We started with that often overlooked medical clearance. Definitely don't want to stumble at the first hurdle. Then there's the biodata form, which is so much more than just listing your credentials. It's your chance to really showcase who you are beyond those qualifications. Your personality, your values, everything that makes you uniquely you.
And of course, we explored that psychological interview, which can feel a bit like navigating a minefield, with all those activities designed to test your personality thought processes and how you handle pressure. It's all about demonstrating that you've got the mental fortitude and the right temperament for a demanding career in public service.
Right. And then the grand finale, the panel interview, where you face those senior bureaucrats and have to showcase your expertise in those optional subjects, your grasp of current affairs, your academic background, and of course, your
Huh.
ability to answer those insightful personality-based questions.
It's a lot to prepare for. But remember, preparation is your key to success. The more you understand the process and what they're looking for, the more confident you'll feel when you walk into that interview room.
Couldn't agree more. And that brings us to the final thought-provoking point from your source, the interviewer's emphasis on moderation. This really stuck with me. What do you think moderation means in the context of public service?
That's a great question. It's something to really ponder as you refine your interview strategy. Does it mean striking a balance in your viewpoints? Presenting yourself as level-headed and thoughtful? Avoiding extremes? Or maybe it's something else entirely.
It's definitely a nuanced concept, and I think it speaks to the heart of what the CSS exam is all about. It's not just about demonstrating your knowledge or skills, but also showcasing your character, your integrity, your ability to approach complex issues with wisdom and compassion.
Exactly. So as you prepare for this interview, think about how you can embody that spirit of moderation, not just in your answers, but in your overall demeanor and approach.
That's a fantastic point to end on. Remember, you've already achieved so much by getting to this stage. Now it's all about presenting your best self with confidence, authenticity, and that all-important moderation. Best of luck to all those preparing for the CSS interview. You've got this.